Hi everyone and welcome back. So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about weight reduction and how I got my car down to a weight of 3,358 pounds. So the curb weight of this car is about 3,600 pounds. So it's been obviously a lot of years, time, money, whatever to get the weight down. And getting the weight down is obviously something that matters a lot for performance reasons. So I'm just going to go over what I did to this car. And then if I didn't care about driving this car in the street, what I could do to get even more weight out of it. I would say the extreme example of weight savings is Matt Field's Drift C8. So that car has like stick shift. It's basically stripped down bare bones just to be the absolute lightest, most powerful drift car that you can make out of a C8. However, we don't have Matt Field's sponsorship and money, so this is what we get. So when it comes to performance cars, there's a pick 2 out of 3 rule. So you basically have the option of a fast car, a cheap car, or a reliable car. It's almost impossible to find all 3 in the same car. I'm not saying that's this car because this car has its own problems, which we'll get to in the next episode on the engine. But regardless of like all of those 3 factors, weight is something that helps, kind of like bring the ceiling down for everything. So when it comes to the cost of consumables and stuff like that, weight can definitely help with that. When it comes to actual performance, going fast in the corners, braking, accelerating, that's just less mass that you're doing all 3 with. Weight definitely helps with that. And then when it comes to reliability, it also kind of helps because there's just less stuff on the car to manage, just day to day. However, one of the questions that I had early on was, why does this car weigh so much? And then I look at cars that have just as much horsepower and weigh less. And the unsurprising thing with all of them is like they always cost way more. So if you look at like the 720S, for example, 700 horsepower, compare that to the Z06. The Z06 is probably like 3,600 pounds. The 720S is like 3,000-ish pounds. There's a reason why the 720S costs that much more, and it's because they prioritize engineering to be lightweights from the very start. They're using like carbon fiber everything, and they just have to spend that money to make it light. Look at the GT4, for example. The GT4 is a car that this car may compete with, depending on who you ask. However, it's a much lighter car, but it's also not a car that is as fast, especially horsepower-wise, and it's a much more expensive car. So you can't just have it all. There's like in engineering, you just have to have a balance. And so when I take possession of a car like this and I want to make it faster, the easiest thing for me to do is weight. Saving weight is, as I just explained, a price. Like you can't save weight and save money at the same time. Saving weight costs money because it's just an engineering trade-off that you just have to make. But saving weight increases performance. So you're essentially trading off the money savings that you would have over buying like a more expensive, lighter car, and you are essentially trading that off for performance because you're shaving off the weight one way or the other. Now, what do I mean by this? A lot of the weight saving techniques in this car cost money. Getting lighter wheels, getting lighter tires, getting lighter brakes, all these things cost money. Getting bucket seats, not only do they cost money now, but like if you were to sell the car as a used track car, it's going to cost money because you're not going to get that money back. So be aware. So actually, before I get into weight saving stuff, I'm going to talk about liking and subscribing for this channel. I'm kidding. I'm going to talk about the 3 things that I've added that make the car heavier, but I think maybe worth it. And it's all basically aero. So when it comes to additions to this car, you can see like I have the splitter, I have the side splitter, and then I have the wing. So the front splitter, I don't know the exact weights as I'm recording this right now, but I might put it up somewhere. The front splitter weighs probably roughly like 20 pounds. The side splitter weighs roughly like 10 pounds. And then the rear, everything over there, I think the uprights are 7 pounds each. The wing is about 11 pounds. And then the uprights have like even more hardware that need to hold it upright. And those are probably 10 pounds or less, I would say. So all in all, aero costs, at least 60 pounds of additional weight on this car. Now, the question is that worth it? I think it is worth it because if I took the aero off, I would be slower. That's just the calculus, right? So yeah. And it's made of as much light material as possible. The front is made of carbon fiber, which is pretty light and durable. The wing is also made of carbon fiber. The uprights are not made of carbon fiber. They could be, and you could save a lot of weight there, especially since it's high up and the center of gravity of this car, you want to make it as low as possible. So there's definitely still weight saving opportunities here. But as I said, converting like the aluminum to carbon fiber is still going to cost more money. So, all right. So I said I'm going to talk about the front of the car first. There is a bit of weight savings here, but the first thing you're going to notice if we take this guy out of the way is that we have no plastic trim covering. I don't know how much that actually saves you. However, it is more than a pound. I can guarantee that. And when it comes to weight savings, every little bit matters. You're just adding, yeah, every little bit matters. Nothing is too small to save weight on. So yeah, just also keep that in mind. However, the keen-eyed of you would already notice a few things weight savings wise. But yeah, as I said, no plastic trim, so that's a couple pounds. We have the anti-gravity battery, so that's at least 20 pounds, maybe 40 pounds, I'm not really sure. We have one of the things that I'm most proud of. I did this a long time ago and I didn't make a video about it. So what I do is I take out the frunk on track days. So this is kind of what I take to the track. I take jugs of gas, because gas is expensive. Thank you, Mr. T. I take my front table, like just to put my stuff on. But as soon as I get to the track, I just grab the frunk and drop it off on the side. Now, there's drawbacks to every single one of the weight reduction things that I'm doing in this car. And there's compromises I had to make. So the compromise I had to make with this one. So first of all, it looks janky. You can see it's not really the prettiest looking frunk on the planet. Second of all, I have to kind of get used to the car not auto locking. So one of these sensors for the remote control is in the frunk area. And so I had to rewire that, and then I have to just accept that unless I keep it connected, you can either have the compromise of locking your car manually or just keeping it connected and having to disconnect it every time. So I kind of don't want to keep disconnecting and connecting the connectors, because that's how you eventually have to replace the connectors. So for the most part, I keep it disconnected, and so I just don't have the car auto lock. However, so what I did in this car is that I just have this connection right here, and I can very, very easily just disconnect it. And yeah, once I disconnect it, the front comes out. I pretty much just leave the screws undone. There's 4 screws on the 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's these 2 screws over here, 1, 2. So I just take that out. Yeah. Ta-da! If you ever wonder what the frunk looks like with no frunk, well, here you go. The other thing that this lets me do is access my splitter rods for extension. So if I want to extend the splitter rods, I can kind of like dig my hand in deep in there and just make it loose so I can extend it. As I already talked about, we have the batteries, and then another hidden, weight savings is water. Water is really heavy. I don't know how many pounds per gallon, but I think 1 liter is 1 kilogram. So it's probably about 7 pounds per gallon. I keep this guy empty all the time. However, my car does not like it, and so it always complains every time I start the car. So you're just gonna have to get used to that. All right, so moving on to the wheels. The entire wheel well area is a place where you can save so much weight. However, it's also gonna cost you so much money. So let's start with the most obvious is the front wheels weigh 50 pounds at least from factory, and then the rear wheels weigh 72 pounds from factory. So if you get lighter wheels, you just save money there. But the problem is with the front wheels, you're usually getting much wider wheels. So the front wheels on this car are like 8.5, and this is like a 10 or 11 inch wheel. And so the weight savings that you're saving from like the lighter material and from forging the car is almost always offset with the increase in size and material of just having a wider wheel. So your front wheels, you're not saving too much. I think I'm saving like 5 pounds here. The rear wheels, I think I went from like 72 pounds to like 50 pounds. So because the wheel difference there is not that much. It's just going from like, 11 to maybe 11.5 or 12. Then yeah, you're not really increasing by that much. And so you're saving a lot of weight by just going forged wheels in the back. The other thing here is that the car comes with Michelin run flats PS4S. And so when you have run flat tires, they just weigh a lot because they have to hold the weight of the car when there's no air in them. And so when you get, lighter, possibly stiffer track tires, you're saving a lot of weight there. That's like $2,000 a set. Forged wheels are like $3,000 a set. Probably on the low end actually. So it all costs a lot of money. AP Racing brake kit. You're saving quite a bit of weight there. I'm gonna put the numbers up, but even the rotors weigh less, the calipers weigh less, the entire system just weighs less, and it performs better. And I think that's the theme that we're gonna see, especially with the track performance parts. So track performance parts, they usually cost more, weigh less, perform better. And that's just a great place to be, minus the cost more aspect of it. And finally, in the wheel well is the suspension. So I don't think the suspension actually saves you much weight here, just because the suspension components OEM are not that different, right? Suspension is just, the hydraulic fluid and all the components inside. I don't think they save you a lot of weight here, but if it does, I will let you know. So now we're going to move inside. So inside the car or the cockpits, the first thing that you notice is the bucket seats. So we have bucket seats. Bucket seats are like the biggest, for me at least, they were like the biggest jump in performance, just because I have such poor feel with the car that I can now feel what the car is doing. And so even like minus like the weight aspect of it, the feel aspect, being able to understand what your car is actually doing beneath you is, for me, crazy. Like that was just like a big epiphany the first time I ever had bucket seats on track. Now, your stock seats weigh like 64 pounds each. That's a lot of weights, but also think about it from like a, OEM perspective. This is a seat that reclines, goes up, goes down, tilts, heats, cools. Some of them have like adjustable bolsters and stuff like that. All these features for 64 pounds is actually not that bad. And I say that because the total weight of one of these seats is like 40 pounds or like 35 pounds max. And you get fixed back, you can never adjust it. Everything is just like fixed in place. It's really light, but it's, it's less safe, it's less comfortable. So yes, you are saving weight. You are giving it up. You are giving up something, in that regard. And as I said, all these weight saving tricks and tips are you just deciding, what am I going to sacrifice in order to be faster? However, you can save even more weight by not having in passenger seats. I used to have like the passenger OEM seat, and then I just bought another bucket seat for that because, I wanted to save an additional 20 pounds. And so if I wanted to save an additional 40 pounds, I can just take off the entire passenger seats. Fuck the passenger, am I right? So, I haven't messed with the dash at all. I think the other tip is, just take all the shit out from your car. You shouldn't have anything in the pockets. You shouldn't have anything in there. You shouldn't have anything in a cup holder, in your glove box. Just take all that stuff out. So you don't really need it. And then the other thing, like the big glaring, omission is the sound deadening system over here. So I think this is probably like 10 to 20 pounds of weight savings. The drawback is you do hear a lot of the engine now, so watch out for that. The final weight savings thing here is the seat belts. So you notice over there, like there's a connector that's just not connected. So that connects to the seat belts. Now, the drawback here is obviously it's probably less safe. You save 5 pounds each seat belt that you remove. So just keep that in mind. It's not that much of a savings. However, I do have the harnesses, and so with the harnesses, it kind of like it was almost redundant to have both. And what I do on the street is I just leave it a little loose or slack so that if I'm ever in an accident, my head hits the airbag before my neck detaches from my body. Actually, the easiest way to save weight on your car is to just take out the carpets. You don't need carpets, so take out the passenger, take out the driver, and you're set. So one thing I did consider on the rear wheel is to take off the parking brake. So the parking brake weighs probably about like 5 to 10 pounds. I don't know if it's each, or I don't know if it's 5 pounds each side or 10 pounds each side. However, I kind of decided not to because I didn't want to deal with all the electronic issues that was going to happen because I didn't have any parking brake, and so I kind of just left that in there. But if you want to do it, be aware that you can take the parking brake off. All right, so for debug reasons, I don't have my airbox in. However, you're going to notice that that's not the That's not the OEM airbox. And I think, this is another avenue to save weight. I don't think it actually weighs that much less, or if any. However, you do see that the carpet is here. And the carpet weighs 1.8 pounds, as I wrote over there. So, again, an additional 2 pounds, easy weight savings. As we get into the back of the car, the easiest way to save weight on any car, any performance car, is to just have less gas in it. Gas weighs probably, again, like 7 pounds per gallon. And, you can imagine 10 gallons, 70 pounds, 15 gallons, 100 pounds. So that's a very light passenger already. If you're doing time attack or something like that, you kind of you don't want to run with a full tank of gas. Obviously, you don't want to run with a half tank of gas. You probably want to run with like a quarter tank or less. So you definitely want to like figure out how much your car uses per lap, and obviously have some kind of reserve there. You do not want to be the person on track who they have to tow because you ran out of gas. I've run out of gas before. Just trying to optimize this, and I was literally driving to the gas station. Like, that's how bad it was, and I ran out of gas. So luckily it was in the paddock. Yeah, don't be like me. So the engine bay is like the last place I kind of optimized for weight. I didn't really touch the engine bay for the longest time just because it sucks. To be honest, I would if you're trying to keep this car more reliable, do not mess with the engine bay at all, because the consequences here are just not worth it. However, I will talk about them and talk about what I did. So I have swapped out the headers from OEM. There's maybe like 14 pounds weight savings there. I swapped out the cats for high flow cats. My advice here is spend money, get better cats. Don't just get the cheapest Chinese cats, which are now for sale if you do want them. I would say get high quality shit. The reason why you want to get high quality shit is because the fit and finish is going to be better. It usually may already take into account just heats, radiation and stuff like that from OEM, from the actual manufacturer. Like, they probably have heat blankets or shielding or something like that. And then the third thing is the core is going to be more reliable. Having a reliable high flow cat core means that you have less smells and less issues. So if you're trying to save weight in this department, just be aware that you don't want to just go the cheapest route. So I've gone the cheapest route in all of the engine components, and I have paid for it with some issue or another, and I'm going to talk about that in the next episode. But anyway, headers, cats, exhaust. Those are the three major opportunities to save weight and keep your warranty, which we do love a good warranty. Now, one mistake that I think I made is that I got titanium exhaust because I thought that, titanium exhaust is going to weigh so little. However, the reason I thought that is because titanium is just, it's a less dense metal. The problem with this is titanium is also a very brittle metal. And so it's really prone to cracking or fracturing. And so in my pursuit of weight savings, I fractured or cracked this guy, which belongs here. And, yeah, you can imagine what happens when you do that. I would say the positive of the titanium, if you're not tracking your car, is that it sounds glorious. I think, it really, really changed the sound profile of the car. I'm up to now 4 exhausts, OEM, the shitty Holley catback exhausts, Holley hooker, whatever, this Chinese titanium exhaust, and then the Paragon stainless steel. And out of all of those, the Paragon stainless steel I've had for the least amount of time, but I know it's on the order of the best one, because it weighs just as much as this, maybe even lighter. Obviously the difference is this is meant to be valved. So if you want to save weight on your exhaust, my advice for you is to don't mess with the headers, don't mess with the cats. Actually, your order should be exhaust, and then very long down should be headers, and then maybe cats. Your exhaust, you can easily save 50 pounds. 50 pounds is really, really, really big. I don't really have to explain all that to you, but 50 pounds is big weight savings. And the sacrifice there is that you may not have control of the exhaust, and you may have to do a check engine lights. So, they have simulators for that, but it's just another point of failure that you're now changing or adding. I will say valved exhausts have not stood up for me. So I've had 2 different valved exhausts. three different valved exhausts. So the OEM valved exhaust started failing pretty early on. I changed it to the Holley Hooker catback exhaust that also ran through valves. Like I bought new valves, I did like spacers and stuff that didn't work. So if you're going to track your car heavily, just forget about valved exhaust. Your car is going to be loud. Just deal with it. So yeah, I think that concludes the section of what I've done to my car and why it weighs a lot less than it does from factory. Now let's talk about what you can do if you don't care about driving the car on the streets. So when it comes to what you can do if you don't care about drivability and stuff like that, this kind of moves into the territory of just start taking shit out, or just start fully replacing parts that work with lighter parts that also work. So the easiest is just your body panels. I think Anderson Composites makes carbon fiber body panels for like every single component of this car. Bumper, hood, roof, doors. These are all things that you can all swap to carbon fiber components. They're not going to save you that much unless you kind of go all out and buy everything, right? It can also introduce a better / nicer body kit for you. So if you're about that life, you can get like a better or wider body kit for you, for yourself. Now the body panels are all made of fiberglass, and so the difference in weight density between like fiberglass and carbon fiber is not that much. It's a lot less than like fiberglass and like steel, like, you know, because steel is much heavier. So you're not going to save that much more. However, everything counts, right? But yeah, now is when you can start like just saying fuck it and just save a lot of weight. So you can take the headlights out, you know, you can take all of the headlight, you know, circuitry out, components. You can take the horn, you could take the entire windshield wiper, everything over there. You can even take the wipers off because, you know, who needs to wipe? I would say you can probably replace this guy with some kind of like carbon fiber alternative. I wouldn't recommend replacing the glass with a lightweight glass just because my glass already has so many cracks on it that like it's only going to get worse. And then you have like the GT3 problem where you have to always replace your front glass. On the inside, you can just take out the floor carpets. You can, as much as possible, take out your dash. You can swap your steering wheel to some kind of aftermarket steering wheel. There's no solution for that as of the filming of this video. So maybe you can make your own, or you can wait for one of the guys to create one for you. There's like a huge tunnel underneath here, which you can't really touch, but all of the stuff above it is stuff that you can take out, right? So if you go look at the, I think Pete's Performance Race Car, they've done something similar. And I think there's like maybe 1 or 2 C8s in the GLGT class of Grid Life that kind of have like, they're just race C8s, and so they figured out like weight savings. So one more thing on what I've added to the car that does add weights but is worth it is the harness bar. So having harnesses is worth it because it keeps you in place and it makes you faster driver. You know, that's just the easiest way to say that. So yeah, you can, you know, take out the carpet from the bottom. I've taken out the trim, or the plastic trim from the top. Outside of that, you know, maybe carbon fiber roof. I'm not really sure what else you can do. You can probably take these guys out as well. And then for your door, you can probably take all this part out and then just rely on like the plastic, the emergency exits over here. And then moving to the back. Again, if you want to keep your warranty, then, you know, you kind of know what to do. Don't touch the engine, don't touch the transmission. I'm not really sure what you would do here, to be honest. If you don't really care, is you can just get rid of the airbox and just like have like a hose all the way from the inlet through to the engine of to the intake of the car. So that way you don't really need an airbox for anything. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for today. If you have any questions about any of the weight saving techniques that I did here, or you have any ideas that I haven't tried yet, please make sure to drop that in the comments. Like, subscribe, and all that. The next episode is going to be about the engine, which I promise is going to be really spicy because I have gone through 1.5 engines, and you're going to understand why in a second, or in the next video. So thanks for watching. I'm going to see you in the next one. Bye.